Hello and welcome to another episode of the Academy podcast with Anfield Index. It's been a very long time since we've done one. I think it's over 2 months. It's been a chaotic summer. I can't remember one like it in my lifetime. But today we're focusing on the young guns and there's loads to discuss. Really exciting. And I'm joined by Academy expert Lewis Bauer as always. So how are we doing, Lewis?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Just fresh from watching the under-16s. So a lot of Academy focus at the minute. Like you say, I'd say it was a quiet start academy-wise to the summer, but things seem to be heating up a little bit now.
Yeah, it is, and there's been a few standouts on pre-season, obviously with Liverpool, but obviously we started. We brought back this academy podcast about a year ago now. It was just as Slot was coming in, and I remember discussing kind of what to expect from Slot. Obviously, Klopp was so heavily focused on the academy. Obviously, Klopp's kids in his final season. Just from your point of view, you know a bit more about it. How do you think Slot's kind of approached the academy, and how different is it to how we saw in the Klopp?
I think it is a debate to be had. I don't think there is a wrong or right answer. Like a lot of people love to remind me, his remit is to win trophies and do that in whichever way he thinks is possible. And so far, he's proven to be very effective, probably more effective than we could ever have imagined. But with managing a club like Liverpool Football Club, there is almost a rule that academy products are always integrated into the club. I think the jury's still out, really. You can see that he has his favourites. One of the things I was told when he first came into the club was that he's very big on tactical instruction. So it doesn't matter how good you are, if you can't be disciplined in the way that you play tactically, then you maybe won't get the opportunity. And we saw last season a lot of the players who were maybe regulars under Jurgen Klopp left to train with the under-21s. And we're seeing it again this season, really. It does seem to be a smaller squad, but in terms of academy inclusion, but we do have to caveat that there's no international tournament this summer. So potentially to be expected, but there are a couple of names who have been with the first team in the past who are yet to be seen this summer in terms of involvement there, like Lewis Koumas, Luke Chambers, or the like, who you will expect will go on loan again, if not permanent moves. We've seen how the club have cashed in recently. But in terms of Slot himself, to answer your question, he has shown that if these players are good enough, he will give them an opportunity. He does seem to have his favourites in Ngumoha, Nyoni, and Ngumoha's getting a big push at the moment. For me personally, I would have liked to see a couple more appearances for Nyoni towards the end of last season. I say, especially with the league already wrapped up, I say this a lot, but it's surprising to me that he's not yet made his Premier League debut. It feels like he's been around for about 2 seasons now. But yeah, he's yet to play in that competition. And yeah, like you said, we was extremely lucky with Jurgen Klopp. No other manager would have made use of the academy like he did. We would look to move first team players out of position. But if you're being critical, you maybe could have asked for 1 or 2 more names on the tour, is what I would say. You have to look at the academy itself and think, would there be any arguments for any players there? And well, you may be looking at Maranello. He's obviously had a more difficult time where he's come under criticism from fans. Maybe Tommy Pillin seems to be well liked by Klopp. He featured against Preston in the friendly. And a lot of people seem to come with the argument of it's not his job. If they're not ready, then if he can't, then that's not Slot's problem, etc. But I would argue that player doesn't have to be ready to play for Liverpool first team to be included in a tour. I think the experience would prove more fruitful in the long run in terms of helping him get ready. And as being around the first team will surely do much better than being with the under-21s. He actually has took Cornell Miscure, but the goalkeeper. And I suspect that he won't play too much out in Asia. But the experience is going to do him a world of good of being in and around and getting a taste of first team football. And I don't see why that couldn't apply to some of the other players. But I wouldn't say Slot's bad per se with the academy. I think there is question marks out there, and this is a big season in terms of that.
Yeah, obviously it's so hard, isn't it? Obviously we're 1 year in, and the pressure. I know it's hard to even think that it was, but the pressure was on Slot in that first season to deliver. So you can understand them maybe not taking as many risks as what Klopp, who obviously built up so much credit over the years. But yeah, you mentioned the three kind of the main players who we're seeing in pre-season at the minute. Obviously, Rio Ngumoha has got people really excited. Lucas Stevenson, Trey Nyoni, and we'll just start with Ngumoha. Obviously, Luis Diaz has now left, and it seems at the minute like Liverpool aren't actually in a massive rush to sign a direct replacement for that on that left-hand side. Obviously, Cody Gakpo will step up, but other than that, Rio Ngumoha is kind of a natural fit there. So are we expecting more minutes for him in the cups this season? Obviously, from what we've seen in pre-season, he's been electric, hasn't he?
Yeah, it has to be really. Like in terms of Ngumoha's personal development, it has to be more minutes because I don't see him as a player that would, especially not this season, go out on loan. I think it's too early in his career potentially. I wouldn't say that as a benchmark for all players, but in his career, it's too early. I think a bad loan at this point would be extremely detrimental. And he's only been a year in Liverpool, so to relocate again, it's a lot of change. With that being said, if we look at the options there, it really has to stick around at Liverpool. So there has to be more minutes. And he's a player that somewhat had me, not eating my own words, but when he first came to Liverpool and he was with the under-18s, speaking to it was slightly underwhelming in terms of the numbers and the output. But for me, I think it's clear to see that he's a player that's going to be better when he plays with better players. Maybe he becomes a bit of a target in academy football, that there are avenues he can't go down because maybe the teammates around him can't open as many corridors as the likes of players in the first team can, understandably so. He obviously can trust those in the first team maybe more, whereas in the under-18 side, he at times he was a bit of a one-man band in terms of the way he wanted to progress the ball. And I think there was some valid criticism when he first come, but I think at the minute he's absolutely flying, and you can see that when the structure's in place for him, he is going to be that mercurial talent that comes through. With him, I think it's if you looked at him statistically, like in the analytics department of a club, like the areas of a pitch that he can get you in, and then ranking things such as like box entries, touches in the box, things like that. It opens up a massive part of the pitch, and you can't really be doubled up on in first team football. I mean, I'm sure he will be at some points, but when you've got the likes of Mo Salah and other players around like that, that's why I think he's going to become a lot more dangerous in men's football. And it's good to see him do as well as he is now. Good to see him get his first goal. He did hit a couple more goals towards the end of last season. Yeah, it is a big year for him.
Yeah, and he seems so highly rated by all the senior players as well. And obviously, there's not just Gakpo to compete with on that left side. You suspect the likes of Wirtz, Szoboszlai, and Ekatike could be used out there as well. So it's not going to be as straightforward as Ngumoha as the backup left winger. Definitely not. But yeah, I think he's definitely one of the most exciting kind of narratives and stories to look out for this season. And another name, obviously, Nyoni, who Slot obviously likes, and obviously Klopp liked. He's a bit different than the other two because he was really liked by Klopp as well. Yeah, like you said, I was a bit surprised. Like the Premier League debut, you just assume that he already has. But he's still so impressive. I know in the game behind closed doors, he seemed to really stand out, and against Preston, he was superb as well. So, what do you think the expectations are for him? Is he another one who maybe a low move is a bit too soon? You don't want to kind of throw him to the wolves, you know, and will he stick around the first team and a bit like Ngumoha just pick up those minutes that are valuable amongst world-class players and learn from them that way?
I think Nyoni's in a bit of a difficult position, not personally, of course, but in terms of deciding what to do with him, I think it's a bit of a tricky one. He's a year older than Ngumoha, and he probably does start to need first team minutes now, but really not guaranteed at Liverpool, especially with the addition of Wirtz, Curtis Jones, and I think as well we the coaches will have some idea, of course, but maybe we don't know his best position, which I think in his case is a good thing. We've seen before where players have almost become too versatile at academy level, and they've spent time away from maybe the best natural position. But I think what makes Nyoni so multifunctional is his skill set. So I don't think he's going to have any issues there. Is it a number 8, a number 10, a number 6 potentially? For me, I think he's better as a number 8.
Yeah.
But we learned how Slot was ruthless when he first joined the club, and maybe this summer there's rumours of Harvey Elliott going. Will Curtis Jones be happy with his role in the side? And Nyoni is obviously somebody that Slot does like. His willingness to start him in these pre-season games. He looked brilliant and behind closed doors friendly. But those minutes are far from guaranteed this season. It's a player that I genuinely wouldn't know what to do with. You'd have to very, very carefully choose a loan if that was the avenue that you'd wish to go down. You would say it would preferably be with a footballing side. Not to say that it's ever a bad thing to send a player on loan to a side that doesn't have too much of a ball and we can learn the defensive sides. But I think we don't want that. I think we just want to see the best of him playing in the middle of a park, and then where he can show off his and develop in a way possible. But I wouldn't know. It's a bit difficult to gauge a level because in that as well you've got you ideally off the bat you're looking at probably a high-end championship side, but it's going to take a lot of trust from that side to be able to give him minutes. So it would then be up to him. So I think he's in a bit of a precarious decision there. Yeah, got a very interesting decision to be made on Nyoni.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. Obviously, Lucas Stephenson as well has really impressed people. He's become a bit of a... he seems to be popping up on social media. The fans seem to really like him, and Slot definitely likes him, his versatility especially. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's only got 1 year remaining on his deal at Liverpool. So what do you think the plan is? Is this a case of he'll stick around the first team, sign a new contract, or sign a new contract and go out on loan again? Obviously, he was at Dundee last year and he'd done really well. Obviously, the manager's literally already come out and said that it would take him back in a heartbeat. So where do we kind of stand with Stephenson, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's got to be. I think from a club point of view, it's got to be contract and a loan, really. Luke Stevenson's a player I've always been a big fan of. It's and you speak to people around the club, maybe not necessarily the coaches, but just other players and like friends and family around then, and he's very much always been recognised as one of the top players in the side. And for me, his style always translated so well to men's football. It was never a surprise to see him doing well. And I think he was dealt a bad hand of cards, really. He was pushed out of position when Stefan Bajcetic was brought in. And I think that still remains to be seen who's going to end up having the better career there. I know it might sound a bit crazy, but I just think his style, his work ethic just translates incredibly well into men's football. And I felt like I was almost watching a different game to some people sometimes. He doesn't seem to be that well rated by the fans, but he's always playing in an extremely attacking side. Almost on his own as a midfielder. And then Stefan Bajcetic came in. He was pushed up to the 8 position. And then Bobby Clark was signed. And like, in all honesty, both great players, of course, but these new signings are always going to be given priority. So he didn't even find himself in the team at one point. So he's doing incredibly well for himself to fight back and be able to show his ability. It's got to be a loan. There must be plenty of interest in him. He's had a solid season in Scotland, which is almost the gateway to one of the big Scottish teams, or maybe the Championship next. Young player of the season for Dundee last year. Incredibly hard-working and well-driven. And also in his time out on loan, he's become really tactically flexible. Played in the midfield 3, midfield 2, right wing back. But his style of football does translate incredibly well between the two, being able to drive up and down the pitch. But we've seen him play as a centre back for Arne Slot now. And speaking earlier about Slot's desire for players to be able to follow tactical instructions, I think that's somewhere Stephenson thrives. Is not the most flashiest of players, but he can play to the basics, do what he's told by the manager, and he's never going to let you down. It will have to be a new contract and out on loan for me. But I think those around him are incredibly well switched on about the life and short careers in football. I think we've seen some players get tied down to long contracts, and then maybe they've been priced out of a move away. I expect he will be able to sign a new contract. Slot does like him, and it should be another good loan this season.
Yeah, he certainly looks really promising. And there's a couple of lads who were out on loan last season who have come back, and I mean, one of them we'll talk about. We'll get him out of the way. Jayden Danns obviously went out on loan, but didn't actually end up kicking the ball in the end because of an injury. He went on loan to Sunderland. Obviously, they ended up getting promoted. Now, there has been murmurs it was more earlier in the window than recently. It's kind of went cold again. That Sunderland were actually interested in bringing him back on loan. Personally, that would surprise me if he got a Premier League loan. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he has done some training again, so he's back on track, hopefully. So do you think it will be a case of another loan for Danns this summer?
Again, we'll have to wait and see. As I think Jack Lusby, who's also great at covering academy football, did say that he'd missed some sessions, which is one of the reasons why he didn't end up going on tour. And wasn't in the under-21 squads either. So again, we'll have to wait and see that. I would rule out a Premier League loan.
Yeah.
I think we spoke before how Wrexham were interested, and they always seem to be in the market for strikers. So we'll see how that goes. That would actually suit logistically. Wouldn't be too far away. I imagine there would be a host of teams interested, but maybe as the injury situations carry on, potentially put off. To be honest, I wouldn't even be surprised to see Danns drop down to League One just to be able to get his. He needs football under his belt now, really, regular football.
Yeah. And obviously, around the club, is there a sense that these injuries are becoming a bit of like we kind of played it down a little bit, but is it now getting to the point where these injuries are a bit more worrying than what we kind of played them off at first, or is the situation around Dan still completely calm?
I think the situation's calm. I think we saw in his initial under-18 season, he absolutely shot up from becoming an under-16 to a first-year scholar. It really did look like he was getting used to his body. So it wouldn't be surprised to see if those issues were somewhat growth-related in terms of that. I don't think there's any real worry. The Liverpool medical team, I have to say, have done a great job in recent years of being able to rehabilitate people who have long-term injuries and being able to get them back playing regular first-team football, which I don't think was always the case in the past. The likes of Paul Glatzel, who was plagued of injuries so much, that now regular for playing men's football at Swindon. Cade Gordon managed to come back after 2 years out, managed to get to a good level. I've seen it with the first team as well. So hopefully we can continue in that vein and we'll see Dan's back out on the football pitch. I wouldn't even be surprised, which is something that I've done before, if we just spend up until January just making sure he's right and then send him out on loan. But hopefully it'll be okay in the summer.
Yeah, and obviously speaking of strikers, Liverpool, it's been a deal that's kind of dragged across the whole transfer window, really. Will Wright from Salford, obviously Arsenal and Man City were interested. Arsenal, I think it was about this time last week, everyone had kind of expected they'd hijack Liverpool's move for the 17-year-old, but now it's looking like there's some reports saying he's even having a medical at Liverpool and that Liverpool have agreed a fee to sign Will Wright from Salford. So just kind of what do you know about him and what's the plans for him, do you reckon?
Well, off the bat, it's a very different deal for Liverpool in terms of age, where we normally pull the trigger before in the gap between 16 and 17 or 15 and 16 before they sign a scholarship. That's how Nyoni and Ngumoha were signed. But this is a year on where Liverpool are going to be paying a fee. Not normally an age that we sign players at, which is interesting. It's also a different area in terms of the footballing pyramid. But signing a striker straight from the EFL is interesting. But he looks really interesting, and you have to be excited at his arrival. He was actually playing grassroots football before he signed for Salford, not too long ago, maybe a year and a half ago. With that being said, the club must have been aware of him for quite some time. They've not been logistically too far away. They do scout the Manchester and Merseyside areas very well. A lot of our players are signed at grassroots level. Looking at footage of him, you have to be excited. He's absolutely massive. Looks like the mould of a proper modern striker, but pure striker, and that's a player that Liverpool don't seem to produce. Or definitely haven't in recent years. Even Jadon Danns, if we look at the academy at the moment, I would expect that he goes straight into the under-21s. Judging from the striking options at the moment, we have Jadon Danns. I imagine he's beyond the academy football at the moment. Although, like I say, if he did stay until January, I think we could play together in the academy. And then other than that, you've only got Josh Sonny Lambie, who himself has had a great season for the under-18s. But he's another player who's similar to Danns, who likes to get on the ball and drop deep, link-up play, and was more moulded as a striker rather than an out-and-out pure 9. And I think they could also play together. for the under-21s. I think Josh Nilambi is a player who would suit being the second striker. And what surprised me about Will Wright is looking at his frame and the way he likes to play. A lot of his clips, he's dropping deep himself. There's actually a lot of goals from outside the box. But yeah, he does look to be very exciting, and you just have to take a look at the clubs interested in him, Arsenal and Manchester City, to know the level of talent that he has. It does look to power through his shots, which I think is a bit more exciting in a striker. I imagine that if he does well at Liverpool, we'll see him in the England under-18 squad sometime soon. But yeah, we don't really have a player like him at Liverpool. Arsenal had the bid accepted, but the player waited out on Liverpool. But interest was known. I think what did play a big factor is that he didn't want to uproot from the northwest, which is nice to see, a player choosing Liverpool over London, as the fable goes. But yeah, massive rise for him from playing grassroots football, likely going to be playing for Liverpool. And there is a gap there in the team for him.
Yes, well, it looks like a really exciting deal, obviously. I mean, Liverpool, this whole transfer window has been really exciting, and that kind of it's nice to see them not focusing too much on the first team, that they're forgetting about the academy as well, because that looks like a real coup. So, yeah, fingers crossed he comes good, and we'll be seeing him in the first team soon, hopefully, not to put too much pressure on him. But yeah, that's about it for today. That's all the kind of stuff to talk about the academy. Obviously, the season starts soon, so we'll be keeping track of the academy teams throughout the season again. And yeah, hopefully Liverpool have a few more stars on the rise in Arne Slot. So thank you very much, Lewis, for your time today. It's been a great chat as always. And make sure you check out Lewis on Twitter. All the kind of information and updates you need from the academy are on there. So yeah, definitely check it out. And thank you again. So we'll catch you in the next academy episode. We'll try and do these fairly frequently. Obviously, this summer's just been chaos on and off the pitch, but I'm sure the next one will be a bit sooner than you've had to wait for this one. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.